Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon podcast. My name is Michael and let's talk about UFC 229. I am going to address the post-fight craziness after the breakdown. I want to keep it technical here and just talk about the fight. So let's talk about the main event. Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Conor McGregor. Just a couple of words of what I thought before the fight. I know plenty of people talked about it, so I'll keep it brief. It is the classic striker versus grappler matchup, but it's not only the striker versus grappler matchup. It's much more than that. One example would be that both of them like to pressure. Conor does it with more finesse, his cagecraft is better, his pressure footwork is better. He doesn't throw a lot of combinations, but he has basic cage cutting weapons like his right hook, left kick to the body, and the front kick to the body as well, although that's more of a pressuring tool. Conor's style is interesting because he's not exactly a pressuring counterpuncher like Mike Tyson or Justin Cyborg, but he likes to do both. If the fight takes place in the open space, he's going to throw his lead left hand, and if you move back, he's going to take a step forward. If you try to open up against him, he's super happy to counter, and the fact that his counters are very precise makes it work really well. Khabib likes to pressure as well, but his main objective is to get a takedown, or more precisely to get a hold of you. Any hold really. What he wants is a grappling exchange, and I'm saying an exchange because that's what's gonna happen when he gets a hold of you. The Dagestani Airlines are taking you on a trip. Khabib is such a good chain wrestler, he stays 2 or 3 steps ahead of you. If one takedown doesn't work, he's going to chain that takedown with another attempt until he gets you down. And when that happens, he has a variety of rides and positions where he can punish you with his ground and pound. On a macro scale, it is the striker versus grappler matchup. The objective for Khabib is to get a takedown and work on the ground, but if he doesn't get there, Conor has a chance of knocking him out on the feet. That's the basis of the matchup, but the way of getting there for each one of those fighters is a little bit more complicated. Now looking at the fight. From the very beginning, Conor was the one moving forward. Like I said, both of them like to pressure, so the answer to who will be the man that is moving forward lays within their will. Conor is a very fast starter. His skill set is ready to be used from the very first second of the round. And he was the one pressuring, actually using his left kick to cut off the cage as he was trying to land his left hand. The first takedown attempt from Khabib was shot from very far away. Khabib got a hold of his leg, and Conor was holding to his waist, trying to reverse. Khabib focused on that single leg, and as good of a chain wrestler he is, he got a takedown not even a minute in. From that single leg, Khabib changed the direction of the drive for the single leg until he got it briefly to the ground, and then he got a hold of a double leg and took Conor down. And he placed himself and Conor against the cage, which is his spot to grapple, his favorite spot to grapple. And he got in a low mount with Conor's legs trapped in between Khabib's legs, and that position is a gateway to where Khabib wants to go next, because when he tangles your legs like that, you're trapped. You can't do anything without changing the position, and Khabib knows that. That's how he stays 2 steps ahead of you. He knows that you have to move in a certain way, and if he doesn't like the way you're moving, he's going to go back to that low mount and force you to move to a compromising position, into a position where he wants you to be. Conor wasn't taking damage, but he wasn't grappling. He was in Khabib's world, proven not only that he can get taken down, but also that he cannot get up. Later on the position changed. Khabib passed to half guard, didn't do any damage, but he did what he wanted to. And here's the thing about Khabib. When he takes you down, the round is over. You're not going to get up. It doesn't only stay true to Conor, but to most of his opponents. And Khabib is so patient on the ground. It doesn't really matter what position he has you in. The objective is to stay on top of you and look for the space to land his strikes. The corner advice after the first round for Conor was to pressure, keep him behind the black lines just like Coach Kavanaugh said. And it's a smart strategy. Conor is good at pressuring, he has weapons to do it, his long frame and precision definitely make him dangerous there, and the pressure could also draw out Khabib's takedowns, which would be easier to see if he forces them out of Khabib. If Khabib forces his opponents, or if Khabib forces Conor to throw, then he can time those strikes and duck under for a takedown. You kinda have to admire Conor's confidence. Sure, he talks a lot, but he also shows it when he fights, starting every round with his hands down, walking Khabib down. Conor was using that front kick to the body to push Khabib back, and sure, it was working, but he couldn't get close enough to use circular strikes to cut Khabib's movement. Early in the second round, Khabib landed a nasty overhand right and sat Conor on his butt for a second. They got a little crazy after that, and Conor was the one backed up to the cage. I thought that he was still a little hurt from that right hand, and that was an opportunity for a takedown from Khabib. From there, he shot a double leg, switched to a single leg grip, and then to a high crotch, lifted Conor up and dumped him on the ground. Again, he got into that low mount position and then transitioned into a full mount. The ultimate position that he wants to be in is the one that he can land the most damaging strikes, which should be called the Khabib position, which is with him on top, his opponent laying on one side, with Khabib having the bottom arm control and putting it behind his opponent's back, and his legs strapped from moving. It's a super compromising position. Not only you have one arm to defend yourself, if you try to move and post with your arm, he's just going to yank it back down, and the other move that you can do is to give up your back, which sucks too. So it's a very difficult position, very compromising position to be in. By the second round, Conor was stopping Khabib from getting into that position, and he was actually recovering guard very well. Khabib wants to float on top of you and find best opportunities for his ground and pound. But if you give him the guard position, the full guard, that's not bad either. From there, he was able to land some good strikes, and he was also talking to him. That's gotta be a very strange experience. Not only you getting punched by an angry Russian wrestler, but he's also talking to you. If you notice the way he punches on the ground it's from a standing position. He's posturing up and getting that power from there. There was a point in the second round where he was just standing on top of Conor, punching him down, landing powerful strikes. Conor tried to defend and cover up and move, but majority of them were landing right on his face. Then Khabib got into the side control, working on a Kimura, and then he got kneed by Conor, which was to the face, which was an illegal strike. I mean, Dominic Cruz was giving some serious props to Conor, saying that he was trying to gas Khabib, making him punch himself out, and I took that illegal knee as a sign of desperation. I mean, what else could he do in that scenario? You're trapped, and maybe you're freaking out, so why not knee him in the face? I mean, it's illegal, but he wasn't penalized for it, so eventually Conor manages to get up, still stuck against the cage, and that's how the second round ended, with Khabib talking to Conor and Conor walking to his corner smiling, putting on a brave face because the situation was not good at all. He was getting smashed. Conor's coach was advising Conor not to chase him, but to pull him in. I'm assuming to play more of a counter game, which kinda makes sense. It would be an adjustment. He pressured and Khabib still got on his hips. He was still able to close the distance, so maybe waiting to counter as he comes in theory makes sense. But at that point, Khabib proved himself as a better athlete. He was more explosive and he seemed to be faster as well. So collapsing the distance between him and Conor was not an issue thus far. And as I was watching the fight, I thought that it won't be. But Khabib is not super defensive either, so there was a possibility of Conor hitting him with a powerful left hand. But as time went on, that possibility got smaller and smaller. He was still throwing that left hand, but Khabib was blocking basically all of them. Conor was more successful landing to the body, which is not a bad idea since Khabib doesn't get tired, and you gotta imagine that Conor was tired. So taking some of that energy away from Khabib, that's what those body shots meant to do. Later on, Conor stopped one of Khabib's takedowns and landed an elbow and a knee to the body. Nothing too discouraging for Khabib. It was when Khabib pressured back and put Conor on the fence, that's where the takedowns came easier, because of the opportunity to change them is greater, because of the cage wall being there. And as Conor stops on the takedown attempt from Khabib, you can hear Joe Rogan on the commentary saying, "Ooh, this is getting interesting, he stopped under the takedown." And sure, that happened, but I didn't thought that it was a big deal. It would be if Khabib was Ronda Rousey, and if he was an easily discouraged fighter, but he's not. At least, I think so. Because that would make sense. What didn't make sense was the middle of the third round, where Khabib and Conor were standing right in front of each other, engaging in boxing exchanges. They were so close to each other, they were standing so close to each other that I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to shoot a takedown. But he didn't. Perhaps it was a way for Khabib to get more information on Conor's strikes, to get some reads and get a better understanding which strikes could work as an invitation for a takedown. So, he can time his takedowns when he understands the timing of Conor's strikes. In the same round, Khabib pushed Conor back against the cage and held him there. Conor was having good control on one of Khabib's arms that prevented him from getting a good grip, but later on he was just holding the inside of the glove, which was another illegal move by Conor. The fourth round starts with Conor pressuring again. He landed a good left hand and a front kick to the body, but it wasn't something that could get his initiative back. Most of Khabib's success came from pressuring back. Conor doesn't like getting pressured. Nate and Floyd Mayweather showed that quite well, and it's a common thing for pressure fighters. They don't like getting pressured themselves. So Khabib was pressuring Conor, and that was where he had most of his success. He also could push him back against the cage and get his takedowns there, which was exactly what happened. Khabib got another takedown this way. Kind of a turtle position, but Conor was still able to move. I'm not quite sure about the terminology of that position, but from that position Khabib has options. He can drag you and push you down, making you carry your weight, or he can switch to a double leg. Or if he traps your legs and gets a control of your arm, the closest one to the wall of the cage, then he can get into the Khabib position we've talked about earlier. Khabib dragged Conor down to the ground, and from there he was just getting from one position to another, controlling Conor very well, staying on top, punching and looking for submissions from time to time, until he got Conor's back, synced up a choke, which led to Conor tapping. Khabib Nurmagomedov was victorious. He defended his title by submission in the fourth round, and what happened after that was unnecessary. I think Khabib tried to hold into the submission too hard. The ref had to step in and separate them. He kept talking to Conor and then screaming at his corner, ultimately jumping the face and getting into a brawl with Conor's BJJ coach. Then Khabib's corner jumped the cage and punched Conor. I mean, this is not what martial arts is about. In a fight that big with majority of casual fans watching, you pull that off? I mean, what the fuck? It's disappointing. I think the guys on the broadcast said enough. Very unnecessary, very unprofessional. Too bad, because his performance was really good. I'm not going to comment on that more since I don't have a lot of people listening. I just want to say that I don't like that. I didn't like that at all. And if you're Khabib, you're not gaining any fans. You wanted to punish Conor, make him pay for all of the trash talk, but more people will feel bad for him than happy for you. Anyway, let's transition into the co-main event, away from own professionalism and back into what martial arts is really about. Let's talk about Tony Ferguson versus Anthony Pettis. I think Pettis is an interesting fighter, maybe not for the reasons you think of. I say he's interesting because he doesn't seem to be able to adjust his style to now very much changed MMA metagame. He is athletic and he is fast and his kicks are powerful, but that's how he was in his early UFC career. Till this day, he mostly relies on his athleticism, quickness, and durability to get by. And with the matchups that this style works with, he does really well. Unfortunately, the styles that are designed or developed rather to be successful in today's MMA, those are the matchups that he struggles with the most. And Tony Ferguson is a crazy man. He usually gets better and even crazier as the fight goes on. Ferguson keeps an insane pace. He really throws a lot of strikes, with variety too. Before the fight I thought that Ferguson's pressure and pace will be a problem for Pettis. I thought that Ferguson can't get too crazy though, because Pettis is a very good fight ender. He's a very good finisher. So if Ferguson gives him an opportunity to hurt him, Pettis probably will. And I thought that for Ferguson to win this fight, he has to pressure Pettis. That's what you gotta do to make him uncomfortable. That's how you fight a kicker. And from the beginning of the bout, that's what Ferguson did. Pettis was kicking him in the legs, which was a good idea, since I'm pretty sure Pettis knows that's what his opponents will want to do to him. So targeting Ferguson's legs with kicks was intended to slow him down as he pressured. Very nice tactic there. And although Ferguson was pressuring and throwing strikes that would push his opponents back, like jabs and front kicks, Pettis was landing his right hand a couple of times, getting the timing down, and Ferguson isn't a fast starter, so that's kinda what you would expect in the beginning of the fight. In the later portion of the first round, Ferguson seemed to warm up a little bit more. He was pressuring more effectively, throwing combinations. Pettis' back was hitting the octagon fence more often. And Ferguson can get crazy, but he's also a smart fighter. There was a moment in the first round when he backed Pettis up against the cage, landed like 2 or 3 punches, and Pettis was waving him in, basically sending an invitation to exchange. But instead of that, Ferguson threw like 2 or 3 front kicks to the body and some leg kicks. I thought it was particularly smart because, like I said earlier, Ferguson isn't a fast starter, so he might have not been comfortable to exchange yet. And just seconds after that exchange, after that sequence, Pettis showed something that made me think he did not learn anything from his previous bouts. He had his back against the cage, and instead of moving and getting back to open space, he tries to scare Ferguson off. In the past, he used to do it by just throwing back at his opponents. This time, he attempted a cartwheel kick. So he made it even more visible, the fact that he's not trying to put himself in a better position, which is sadly the story of Anthony Pettis. But I'm sure we'll talk about that later. Maybe I'll make a video about that. We'll see what happens. Anyway, back to the fight. At the end of the first round, I was pretty sure that Ferguson was holding the initiative of the fight. He was backing Pettis up, he was kicking him in the legs, kicking him in the body, he was throwing more combinations. Basically, he was doing what he wanted to do to him. The corner advice for Pettis was to counter Ferguson's kicks, which is not a bad idea at all. Ferguson was kicking quite a lot, but my main objective would be to do something to stop that pressure. First, you gotta move. You cannot make yourself an easy target. And then maybe throw uppercuts, intercepting knees, maybe a flying knee if you want to be flashy. A jab would probably be a great idea, as well as the lone line side kick to the leg. I'm pretty sure Pettis can do that, and it would basically stop the pressure since they are straight strikes. So there isn't a lot of ways of avoiding them, particularly the low line side kick to the leg, which you kind of have to move back to avoid it. You can't really catch it, you can't really parry it. So it's definitely a good weapon to stop the pressure. And I felt like Pettis has enough of kicking experience to actually do that. And what he definitely wasn't going to do was, for example, what Barboza did to stop Ferguson's pressure. It didn't work for long, but it was something. Barboza was throwing combinations with short hooks and uppercuts. He pretty much boxed Ferguson up in the first round of their fight. Pettis, although not a bad boxer, his best punches are his 1 and 2, his jab and his right straight. Regardless, he needed to do something to stop the pressure, because that's what's gonna make him tired. And he was just getting backed up against the cage and he was in strikes, so definitely the pressure was something to be concerned about. In the beginning of the second round, Pettis landed that right hand just as Ferguson was kicking him, so I guess he listened to his corner. And Ferguson was pretty hurt, doing what he usually does while hurt, which was moving very weirdly. Like, I mean, I know he's hurt, but it's not exactly a chicken dance. It's like he's kind of aware that he's hurt. It's like he's turning and he's rolling, trying to scramble and trying not to get hit more. Anyway, from that, they ended up on the ground with Pettis on top. Ferguson got his feet on Pettis' torso and pushed him away and stood up. And at this point, both guys were bleeding pretty heavy. And I gotta give some props to the ref, Jason Herzog, for cleaning them up, making sure it's all good, which is nice to see compared to the previous UFC card. They were back on their feet. Ferguson kept the pressure on, throwing combinations and landing at a nice rate too. At first I was kind of surprised that Pettis was getting stuck on the fence that frequently. He usually tries to move, but then I realized that perhaps Ferguson is one of the most relentless pressure fighters that he ever faced, besides Rafael dos Anjos. Plus the leg kicks. I thought that the leg kicks played a big role in the pressure too. He was kicking both inside and outside of Pettis' legs, which worked as a steering tool. And then when he had him against the cage, it was combinations and elbows. Pettis was throwing back from time to time and once again showed his durability, but he was getting beat up. The second round ends and Pettis' corner stops the fight. They said it was a broken hand, but man, it was much more than that. Even though Pettis was able to hurt Ferguson in the opening of the second round, after that, Ferguson got his initiative back and just poured it on. He's a non-stop pressure machine. And I'm kind of glad that they stopped it there, because if you look at it from an analytical point of view, I don't think there was something that Pettis could have done at that point to win the fight. Sure, if you paid for the pay-per-view, you probably want to see that until the end, but man, I'm pretty sure Pettis was done at the end of the second round. And I have to give props to his corner, man. They didn't hesitate to stop the fight. You know, he was taking a lot of damage and their fighter wasn't really doing anything to get his initiative back and trying to win the fight. He was just basically fighting back on an autopilot. So Ferguson wins by TKO in the second round, and now he's probably the number one contender. So title fight makes sense, but after what happened after the main event, that might hold up the lightweight title, and we still don't know if Khabib will retain his title or maybe he'll get stripped. If that happens and Ferguson fights for the title against somebody else, it would be kind of funny, since the roles were reversed when Ferguson was stripped of the title and Khabib was fighting for it. UFC kind of uses titles and interim titles like a tool to sell their pay-per-views, so I guess whatever they gotta do, man. If they need a title fight and Khabib cannot fight because he gets suspended, I would not be surprised if they strip him of the title and and make Ferguson fight for the vacant title. Anyway,